phone calls, no messages. Nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can, of course, tune in here at AM 830 as well as the TuneIn app. That's right. If you don't have it, seconds to download it, punch in WCRN, take us anywhere. Do me a favor, hit the like button so that we know you're there, and then it's right there, easy for you to find anytime, all devices. And most of us usually let our streaming, right, sync up with our car speakers, so it's real easy to do. You can also tell Alexa to play WCR, and she'll do that, no questions asked. And we are streaming on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show. That's Facebook and Twitter. The YouTube channel, Joe Mangiacotti Show. LinkedIn, and even Twitch TV at Joe M Show. That's right. So several ways to listen to the show. Take your pick. As far as the streaming, not a big production, folks, just a camera in the studio. You can check it out and see what the studio looks like, and probably see Teddy Goodpup here hanging on the console. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. We have a text line at 617-297-8388, or email textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in real time. And if you want to reach the show with email, do it with the show email. That's joemshow@gmail.com, not the text Joe on the radio. I only look at that while we're on the air. We're immediately following the show. All right, that takes care of most of the, housekeeping that we need to do. 871-7000 to join the conversation. There's a lot going on right now because we've got the big production for tomorrow, right? The January 6th committee hearings. But this isn't committee hearings, folks. This is a production, an ABC production, which ultimately is owned by Disney. Funny, huh? How that works. But they brought in James Goldston. Now, James Goldston is the guy that was behind Good Morning America, Nightline. He's also the one that killed that story about Epstein and the Clintons. Do you remember the anchor on the hot mic? And I think Project Veritas might have let it out. And she was just chatting, not realizing this is a hot mic and being recorded, about the story they had. And she's saying we had everything on him and everything on the Clintons, all these files and da-da-da. And he killed that story. That's the guy who's behind tomorrow night's primetime show. It's funny how they mock Donald Trump for having a reality show. The number one show, by the way. And this is nothing short of nothing but a reality show and a put-up job. It is polished propaganda. Now, Republicans are claiming that there's going to be counter programming. I'm not sure what that is or what they mean by that, but apparently it's kind of being spearheaded by Republican House Rep Elisa Stefanik, and she's saying that the Republicans are going to be all over the airwaves tomorrow. There was a press conference this morning where they talked about this. House Republicans scheduled to make an appearance. We're going to have Steve Scalise, Rep. Jim Banks, and Jim Jordan. Now, let me refresh your memory in case you forgot. When they were putting this January 6th committee hearing together, Nancy Pelosi picked the Republicans. First time ever that the other side gets to dictate to the other side who gets to be on the committee. So Rep. Jim Jordan and Jim Banks were supposed to be on the January 6th committee representing the Republican side of the aisle. And Pelosi didn't allow it. She kicked them off and she brought in some rhinos. She did not want Representative Jim Jordan, the Republican from Ohio, asking the types of questions we know he would have asked. No, This is a put up job, completely orchestrated. Did some horrible things take place and some stupidity that day? Absolutely, no question about it. And many of us condemned it in real time. Did an unarmed former Air Force veteran deserve to be shot and killed? No, not at all. And despite what the spin might be, nobody else was killed on that day. If you were to ask a lot of people, they would have thought people were killed during that riot. The only one killed was an unarmed veteran shot through a window by one of the Capitol police officers, period. So this is going to happen tomorrow night, 8:00. This is a big to-do. I don't know what about these counter programmings. I don't know. So maybe you're going to hear some of these people, Banks and Jordan and Stefanik, on some talk shows and things like that. But I think they'll be surprised at the lack of ratings. Because as far as I'm concerned, folks, this is a political ploy. Nothing short of that. Because most Americans, certainly not those ones that are still held in solitary confinement in jail cells for wandering around the Capitol, they haven't moved on. But for most Americans, I think they're more concerned with hyperinflation, gas prices, food prices. They're more concerned with this proxy war in the Ukraine. There are so many other things that immediately are affecting their day-to-day lives. And I think that the administration and the Democrats are trying to do a ploy here to gin up their base, try to say, let's not forget this. Now, the line about this, when they say we came this close to losing our democracy, do you not have to scratch your head and say, are you kidding me? If we were this close to losing our democracy, maybe we should. There was absolutely no threat of us losing our democracy, folks. If you get a hold in, and it's hard to, you got to go to the right places because they've buried so much of this video on there. Majority of the people walk through open doors, escorted, or at least manned by Capitol Police who waved them through. It's on video. And they're walking around half dumbfounded that they're in the Capitol. These aren't people that are hardened criminals or were there to do anything wrong. Now, some did. If they did any damage, if they broke any door or window, you broke the law. There's consequences, and you should face those consequences. You had the jamoke in the speaker's office, feet up on the desk and stuff. What are you doing? Grow up. Isn't that I think that's the guy that was dressed with the Viking horns and everything. He's a jamoke. He's nothing to be said. None of these people were armed. And then you got to remember, from their point of view, they didn't think they were hurting democracy. They were convinced that this was a sham election and they were trying to preserve the country and preserve the integrity of the election. I'm just pointing out that's what they're coming from. What a few people did that day, absolutely wrong. And if you just follow the crowd and there's Capitol Police on either side of the door and they open the door and they're moving barricades and letting you come into the State House that day, in my opinion, you haven't done anything wrong. It's a people's house. It's a public building. And if there was nothing to say, don't enter here, or a Capitol policeman saying, don't come in here, to me, you haven't violated any law. Now, for the ones that started to go in areas that were restricted and they shouldn't have, and they ignored, yes, you're breaking the law. Stop it. Now you're trespassing. Now you're breaking and entering. Now you're doing things. Even if you drink the soda out of Pelosi's refrigerator in her office, you stole it. I mean, you get down to it, you broke the law. But what is happening tomorrow night is a show, a big show. And I think they'll be disappointed with their anticipated ratings. I think they're going to think, or they're thinking, this is going to stop all this talk and all this other stuff. And we're going to remind everybody just how horrible this was. Yet these are pretty much the same people who allowed courthouses to be Molotov cocktailed, tried to burn them down, burn cruises down, sometimes with police officers in them, shot people, looted stores, hurt people. And these people are either not facing charges, reduced charges, time served. I mean, unbelievable the duality of the justice system depending on which side of the political aisle you're on. Meanwhile, we've got the largest caravan in the history of caravans coming in the last several years when this has become a thing, right? 32 miles long, up to 15,000 people, all coming here with this sense of entitlement because this administration has messaged them that you won't be turned away and you'll be welcomed here. Wrong message to be sending. Mayorkas and those try to tell us, again, it's so Orwellian that we're constantly being told how things are, yet all our other senses tell us the contrary. Our sight, our hearing, our brains, our intellect that are able to see and read about things, watch the drone footage. So we see what's happening. We know what's happening.
1 minute.
But yet they tried to tell us that's not what's happening. So again, tomorrow night is nothing more than a rewriting of history, ramping up things that happened, exaggerating things that happened. I don't think you're going to hear too much about the police officer killing an unarmed civilian. I don't think you're going to hear a lot of things about
30 seconds.
Oh, different things that were done and said, like opening the barricades, or President Trump authorizing up to 20,000 National Guards people to be used to secure the Capitol, and Mayor Bowser turning it down.
10 seconds.
As well as Nancy Pelosi turning it down. But you don't hear about that a lot. You don't hear
Here comes
about
the
that at all.
music.
So we're going to take a quick break here, wrap up the first segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with me. We'll continue on the other side at 508-871-7000 to join the conversation.
It's summertime, and the road is calling you. Hi, I'm Paul Koalas, president of Linders. Your perfect escape to summer fun awaits you here, where we offer the area's largest selection of late model, certified pre-owned vehicles, most still under factory warranty.
Like a 2019 Lincoln MKC Reserve all-wheel drive with just 8,000 miles for only $37,995.
For hot deals on the hottest vehicles, visit Linders on Granite Street in Worcester.
Linders, the intelligent alternative.
Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Fluorescent lamps.
Fluorescent lamps.
Thermometers.
Thermometers.
Thermostats.
Thermostats.
These could all contain mercury, so let's dispose of them properly. Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly. Mercury is harmful
1
to
minute.
human health and the environment. To learn what products in your home may contain mercury and where to safely dispose of them, please contact your local Board of Health or Department of Public Works or visit keepmercuryfromrising.org. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly.
Visit keepmercuryfromrising.org, because together we can keep our environment
Here we
safe.
go.
Brought to you by Win
30
Waste
seconds.
Innovations. Performance for the planet.
The Band's Visit is the Tony and Grammy Award-winning Best Musical.
Let me tell you about Petah Tikva. Such a city, everybody loves it.
The Washington Post cheers. It's a funny fish-out-of-water comedy with offbeat charm. The 10-time Tony Award-winning Best
10
Musical.
seconds.
The Band's Visit.
Welcome to Norway.
Coming to the Hanover Theater June 16th through 19th. Tickets available now at thehanovertheater.org.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know.
you.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Again, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. What say you? 617-297-8388 for the text, or text Joe in the radio at gmail.com. So we've got the big production going on tomorrow night. GOP, certain GOP members are promising counter programming. They'll be all over the airwaves. We'll see what happens. Again, they brought in this guy, ABC, James Goldstone. And, he was the former head of Good Morning America, Nightline. So he's been tapped to, bring in his storytelling skills here and create a dramatic presentation about the January 6th incident here. Are we going to see unseen footage? I don't know. But what we see is going to be carefully selected, and it's going to carefully go to the narrative, right? The three broadcast networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, will carry the hearings in prime time. Fox will do coverage of it well with drop-ins, but also CNN and MSNBC will be carrying it. So they're trying to make it almost as if you can't avoid it, but you can if you want to. So this starts tomorrow, again, 8 o'clock. Now, we don't have these things usually in prime time. Now, we've had hearings like, justices, Supreme Court hearings that will Miranda into the evening, right? They'll go on long, but we don't usually do this. This isn't usually done. So this is a Hail Mary as far as the Dems are going to try to, gin it up and do it all over again. Meanwhile, folks, kind of a fork away from normal things that we see at White House press briefings. Matthew McConaughey showed up in D.C. Now, he is a Uvalde native. He was born in Uvalde, Texas, where the horrific school shooting took place. His mother was a teacher, I believe. I heard that. But mom was a teacher. He grew up there, and he said himself, this is where I learned how to shoot, how to handle guns in Uvalde, Texas. And I think that we could all agree that most young men, teenagers and boys, are taught gun handling and gun safety at a very early age in that state. It's a long tradition. Texas Rangers, the frontier, cattle rustling, all of that goes with it. I mean, that's just part of what Texas is. And he says, I learned it there. So he showed up, well, according to what he said or what I saw him say in an interview, he heard about it. It was very tough. Hugged his children a little longer that night, but the next day, him and his wife and kids got in the car and they went back to Texas, where he was born and raised. And they spent a few days there. And so he went to D.C. yesterday, met with the president, and then they allowed him to go out into the press briefing at the White House. And he had a very passionate and a very moving speech to give. And he talked about this. My takeaway from what he had to say, folks, was, and this is important, that there's more, that we have, both sides, we have more in common than the powers to be are letting us think. You got the far left and the far right who aren't agreeing, and they try to convince you otherwise. And he's saying that we need to lift the veil from the masses and take the microphone back and take the power back, because we're closer than we think on this and many issues. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I've said this more times than I count, that if you were to believe certain politicians and media that this is an extremely divisive, racist country, systemically racist, and I maintain we are not. Are there traces of racism from days back? Yes. This was the time. But today, when you're born here in America and you're an innocent child, you would have to be taught racism. Someone growing up isn't the interstate going here, because remember we were told that our highway systems are racist because they were decided to go through certain areas and so forth when they were designed out. But we've gotten to the point where they've applied everything is racist. And you know what happens when you cry wolf too many times and you use a term too many times, it loses its effectiveness. As a matter of fact, the new head of CNN, what did he come out and say? Hey, ease up on the new breaking news banner. Right? Everything, breaking news. It becomes ineffective. Because you hear that, you see that, you think, oh, okay, this must be important. And then it's just the same story you've heard about all day or for days. So why are you doing that? So you get the point. You continually say something's racist, and then that term has lost a lot of its impact because of that. So he came out, and my takeaway was he's saying, look, there's more of us in the middle, there's more that we agree on than we disagree on. And he basically said there's 4 points that he'd like to see happen, and that he thinks that both sides can come towards this. Let me share what they are first, and we can talk about them. 508-871-7000. What say you? Again, 508-871-7000 if you want to inject into this. He's talking about a waiting period, a purchase and pause, if you will. So you go in to buy the gun, they say, thank you, we're doing the background check, or you clear the background check, you can pick the gun up in 3 days, 72 hours, or 48 hours, whatever it is. And again, I'll go through what he proposed and then we can talk about it. Background checks. I don't know a lot of people that are opposed to the background checks. He proposes to raise the age of purchase on the AR type of rifles from 18 to 21. And then he's talking about red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them. So let's talk about that. Waiting period, a purchase and pause. I don't know if I have a problem with that. I think that's fine. I mean, I've always used to go into a gun show or gun shop, usually knowing what I want before I go in. I've done all the research and I know what I want to add, and you go in and you just buy it. It would be frustrating for them to say you're going to come back in 3 days to pick it up, since people like me have probably put far more time into deciding what we're walking in to buy. I think very few of us blindly, who are licensed carrying, NRA members, practicing gun safety and all that, arbitrarily stop in gun stores and just buy something random. But I understand what he's saying there. And as far as the background checks, who doesn't agree with that? Now, the problem that we have, folks, with the background checks, they're only as good as the information fed into the system. And we have example after example where in one case the Air Force didn't feed information into a former Air Force person who was let go and dismissed. And if that information had gotten into the system, it very much would have been denied, right? And we had a bill that was put in I think 2018 or 2018, a ban on assault weapons, that very little talk about it. And a big part of this bill that went in was the background checks, but nobody was conforming to the feeding the information in. And then we have the problem with, like we did in Texas and even in Florida, when the perp is young, 18, they haven't been around long enough to have a decent history on them. Yet, all kinds of red flags and troublesome things were there, right? Every time after this incident happens and they shoot up a school or a supermarket or a theater, and they do a deep dive into their social media, they're very disturbing posts. In the Texas Uvalde shooting, this kid had posted pictures of mutilated and dead cats in bags. The torture and mutilation of animals is a telltale sign of a disturbed person. But how does that information make it into the background system? Well, that kind of leads us into the red flag laws. Now, that's a broad term. And what exactly do you mean by red flag laws? And what's required? Can an ex-spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend weaponize a red flag law, knowing that their former partner owns several weapons or goes to the range on a regular basis and decide to make a phone call and weaponize it? We've seen, domestic abuse laws weaponized. Can that happen? What's required before any action is taken? Do they need to go before a judge, magistrate, who has to hear all the evidence, all the tips, the phone call, why they think they should go see this person, much less confiscate weapons?
1 minute.
Or do they confiscate first, and then you have to defend and prove your innocence, which you can't prove in a negative? In the fabric of the United States is we are innocent until proven guilty, and you need, the government that is, they need to prove you're guilty of something. So how exactly to red flags law is going to work?
30 seconds.
Who can trigger it? And what happens when it's triggered? And at what point is both your Second Amendment right and your civil rights violated? At what point? So that is very important as to defining what a red flag law is and how that's going to work. But we're coming up against the clock, folks, so we're going to take a break halfway through.
Here's the music.
The Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. So we'll take a break. We'll come back on the other side. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Again, that's 508-871-7000. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Stick with us. We'll be back for the second half.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. Here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. Afternoon today is going to brighten up nicely. So after a soggy start to the day, expect some partial sun this afternoon. High temperatures probably around 80 degrees. It is going to run a little more humid than the past days out there, so kind of that summery feel. In fact, we're going to stick with a dry forecast overnight tonight before some downpours return tomorrow. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
Hey everybody, Ryan Maloney here from It's the Liquor Talk, letting you know that you can hear us Saturday mornings at 11, but also at our new time, weeknights, right after Howie Carr at 7 p.m. It doesn't stop there. Randall and I are going to stick around and
1 minute.
Star music after the show. So join us for New England's only show about wine and spirits, and then pour yourself a glass of your favorite adult beverage. Enjoy Randall and I as we listen to your favorite music on the North Star.
All right.
Dr. Satya Mitra has journeyed from a childhood of poverty and homelessness to a successful career as a financial advisor, motivational speaker, and community leader. Now inspired by his guru, he uses his experiences to positively affect the lives of underprivileged people. We strive to house our blindness, poverty,
30 seconds.
homelessness, female empowerment, and good citizenship initiatives within the Joy Guru Humanitarian Center. If you wish to contribute or know of deserving persons or initiatives that could use our assistance, please contact us at 508-641-8441.
Think you're dealing with drug poisoning, chemical poisoning, food poisoning? Call the Poison Helpline first for fast, free advice from medical professionals. Call 1-800-222-1222 anytime, anywhere. Save the number, save a life.
Okay, here we go.
Department of Health and Human Services.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. All right, I found in my notes the Finks-Nix bill. That was March of 2019 that was passed. And a big part of that was to make sure that information was fed into the system. We're talking 6 million people are in the background check system, FBI, but it wasn't being adhered to, and the information wasn't getting in there. In that, if the information's in there, the background check is useless. So that has to be addressed in agencies, and it seems like we always have this problem, don't we? That agencies aren't being cooperative and sharing. I mean, that was a huge problem post 9/11. And it changed the way that these intelligence agencies were supposed to communicate and talk to each other. So the left hand knows what the hell the right hand's doing. So that bill passed in March of 2019. And I don't remember a lot of coverage and a lot of talking about it. Now, the other thing that Matthew said was he was sick of responsible gun owners, or he's saying that responsible gun owners are sick. They're fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by deranged individuals. Now, that I can agree with, because one person does something, and again, they brush everybody who is a Second Amendment person. I don't know how we want to phrase that, but they agree with our Constitution and our Second Amendment and our First Amendment, but they want to villainize people who are Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment people, and brush everybody with one brush. And I agree with McConaughey saying sick of that, and people who practice on the Second Amendment are sick of being lumped in with deranged people. And it's not the gun that's the issue, it's the person that is the issue. Now, before I move on from this, though, I understand that he made a huge impact yesterday, to the point that talking heads were saying it was probably the best speech and presentation at the White House in many, many presidential terms. Whatever. Brett Baer asked him straight out. He had him on his show yesterday or last evening. Are you running for office? He said, I am not running for office. Because you would think that this is because, wasn't he going to run for governor at one time or something like that? So you think this might be kind of laying the groundwork for a race of some time, a senatorial or maybe a house or something like that. He said, nope, not going to happen. The only thing I want to point out, and Jesse Waters played this clip of him in 2018. Now, his messaging 4 years ago was a little different, because he's at the podium and he is adamant about banning assault weapons and telling people that they need to take one. So do we go with the 2018 Matthew McConaughey or the 2022 Matthew McConaughey? Now, I understand people are allowed to change their mind and so forth, but it's always better if you acknowledge that. And that's fine. And I think people accept you and have a little more faith in your integrity when you say, hey, I used to think this way, and I've changed my point of view because either you've come to learn new information, new data, or whatever reason. It's more palatable to take it that way. But when you do a flip-flop or a change and you don't even address or acknowledge that change, people go, are you expecting me not to notice that? Are you expecting me to ignore that and go with the one that I like? And you're off the hook on that? I mean, we can look at Hillary over and over again for all kinds of flip-flops and changes that she did. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. Hey, Ken's been waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, good afternoon. What's on your mind? Ken? All right, I'll go back to Ken in a second. Meanwhile, so McConaughey is making this supposedly great speech, and it was. I mean, if you watch it and go watch it, it's very passionate and it's very effective. But we also have, Robert Francis O'Rourke, i.e. Beto O'Rourke, who didn't, not that long ago, told us, hell yeah, we're coming for your AR-15s, your AK-47s, and we'll come door to door to take your guns away. Now he's running for governor, and he's saying that he needs to defend the Second Amendment. Now that's a flip-flop. This is he's a perpetual candidate. I've said this already. He's a John Kerry wannabe, except his wife, I don't think, has the same money Mommy Teresa has. So to me, he's a non-factor in this, as far as I'm concerned. All right, 508-871-7000. Let's go to Ken, who's been waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what's on your mind?
Hi, Joe. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I do.
Good. I want to get back to Mondays with Senator Moore.
Okay.
Not so much the questions I asked, but the ones that Mark asked, and you followed up with questions, namely the driver's license in the state to illegal immigrants. And you asked a very clear question that I think he honestly answered too, as to why did you vote for the license? And he cited two sources. One, that there were police representatives.
I think it was the large city police association, if I remember. That's what he said.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
And then I think he also mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. And I heard those two answers a light went on. So wait a minute here. What he's really telling us is that those representatives matter more than the citizens. Because we know, I don't care if you're in blue Massachusetts or not, there isn't a state in the United States that supports giving license to illegal immigrants. Because once you do that, that means that we, all of us, the listeners, are second-class citizens, and illegal immigrants in Massachusetts are first-class residents. They have higher standings. They don't have to pay income tax at the state, federal, but they get their licenses. They get to live the rest of their life, and we know they're going to have access to welfare. They're first-class residents, and we're second-class citizens. Unless the voters wake up to this reality and act, namely on November 8th, we get what we asked for. Because guess what? The business people don't care about us. They want cheap labor. The cops are probably, especially urban areas, they're saying, hey, if I arrest somebody that's illegal, the feds are just going to send them back. Why bother? I don't want to be bothered by this work. Well, they need to be bothered. Everybody needs to be bothered and wake up and serve we the people who vote you in office.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because in essence, these special interest groups, they have more sway to where they say, opposed to A, common sense, and B, what the average citizen wants. I understand what they're trying to say with the police departments that are in densely populated cities, that they tend to have to deal with a greater or larger number of illegals than a smaller town does, say. And how many times are you going to pull a person over and give them tickets and so forth, court date, that they never show up from, and they just change their identity, and you might pull them over again and there's somebody else, and they don't have a license. And I brought it, I think I mentioned it to the senator, that I've been told by Framingham police officers and people in Framingham that, that's going back a couple of years, that it came down to them. You know who they are. They live in town. They're driving around. Stop pulling them over. They never show up for court. And they change who they are, even if you pull them over again. And because they don't have an ID and all that, it just stop. It's a waste of time. Don't even bother. I don't see any police department saying, you know what? Don't bother pulling over Joe Mangiacotti. Just let him go. Let him go. You can drive without a license or insurance. That's fine. So yeah, those are special rules for them, is it not? And I think that's where people get aggravated, because you've already violated the sovereignty of the nation by illegally entering the country. So you broke that law. And we've discussed this on the show over and over again, that once by breaking that law, in order to maintain, you have to continually break laws.
2
because
minutes.
you either have to assume somebody else's identity, or in a lot of cases, and I've gone over this in past shows, can detail the big racket that there is they rent the IDs of citizens of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico being a territory, then they're not, so someone who's not going to come to the mainland from Puerto Rico, they lease their identity. And that's what they use. And then they have to, it's a continuous revenue stream, because when that illegal wants to buy a car or get a mortgage, they're going to go back to that person, pay some more money to be allowed to do that. And that's how that kind of stuff works. So that's where we get aggravated, because you just don't come in illegally. You have to continue to break laws and violate just the normal decorum of everything to continue to live here. Where I've always maintained, if we just secure the border and then establish a streamlined, path to citizenry, but also allow people who want to come here and live to come here. If you can come up with that kind of money for coyotes, you can fly here and show that you have enough money to rent an apartment and live while you get a job, and guaranteeing that you are not going to access any programs or what they call entitlements, which I never liked that term. Why are you entitled to this?
30
if
seconds.
You weren't even born in this country. That makes no sense on any front. We're coming up against the clock. You can hold, Ken, if you have any more to give, but I do have to break. That's just the way the clock is, folks. So we're going to take a break and come back for the fourth and final segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. To join the conversation, it's 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. We'll wrap up with the fourth and final, and we'll continue on the other side,
It's the
folks.
music.
Gordon Lightfoot, live, the legend in concert. October 19th at the Hanover Theater. A night of hit after hit after hit. Get tickets now at thehanovertheater.org or call 877-571-SHOW. Gordon Lightfoot, the legend in concert.
At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we offer running gear to our guests. Why? It's not to help you race to catch your flight. It's so that you can pack less and work out more while on the road, because we know what a runaround travel can be. Westin Workout Gear Lending. Westin, let's rise.
Good day. This is Noel from Computer Hospital at 653 Chandler Street in Worcester. COVID-19 is upon us, and the Computer Hospital is here to help with your home office as well as keeping your PCs up and running so you can stay in touch with family and friends. Our hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 7, Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 6. Call me at 508-314-1391. The Computer Hospital, 508-314-1391. 653 Chandler Street in Worcester. 508-314-1391.
Hi, I'm Lee Gaudette from the Gaudette Insurance Agency, a third-generation company located in Whitensville, with branch locations in Grafton, Southborough, Westborough, and Shrewsbury. We are a full-service independent agency offering all aspects
30
of insurance to businesses, industry, and individuals. Stop in and see us at any of our locations for a free assessment of your insurance needs. Also, listen to WCRN on Friday mornings at 9:30 for our radio show.
Talk about real estate, mortgages, and the economy on the Drew Mortgage Show. Weekdays at noon
All right,
on
here
Full
we
Service
go.
Radio, AM 830 WCRN.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. inside to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, we're live streaming on the TuneIn app as well as my social media platforms, and I will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Political Thursday. Again, Jerry Doherty out on vacation, so we'll be solo, but we're being joined by Sheriff Hodgins, who's going to come in, I think, in the first segment or so, and we'll talk to him a little bit. He's gotten quite well known with his stand on illegal immigration and his efforts to try to rectify the situation. So that will be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Political Thursday. Ken was on the phone before going into the break. You're still with us, Ken?
Yes, I am.
All right. You had something else you wanted to talk about. So we were talking, folks, about the fact that Massachusetts did pass that we're going to give illegals driver's licenses. However, that driver's license is supposed to be the old driver's license, not the new Real ID that we have to all get, the one that will let you get into federal buildings, onto airplanes and things of that nature. It will be the old license. But also, I want to mention that there is no denotation on it, that if you are a police officer and you pull this person over, there's nothing. It's not vertical. There's not a stripe on it. There's nothing on that license that will tell the officer that you're an illegal alien in this country. As far as they can tell by the license, you're perfectly legal to be here, which I think is a mistake. And second is the DMV is supposed to take on the responsibility of ensuring that that person does not register to vote. Yet at the same time, we have automatic voter registration tied to our licenses. So you tell me, how does that work? Ken?
I can't, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
None of what you stated works. But I had another issue to add because while a lot of what you described, I totally agree with, you can't put that all on a bumper sticker. And so let me cut to the chase also. We, not all that long ago, within the last 2 or 3 years, we had a judge that literally had an illegal immigrant right in front of him.
In the courtroom.
I don't remember which.
I remember her. And she knew that ICE was waiting outside.
Right.
And she instructed the
out
bailiff
the back door.
out the back door. She lost her judgeship for a while. She got suspended. Remember that she got reinstated with all the back pay and everything quietly later on.
Well, then where are our representatives impeaching this judge? They have the power to do that.
I agree.
And we have the power to kick them out if they don't.
She should have been removed from the
take a
bench
bumper sticker.
with never being allowed to return to that position because she absolutely violated her oath. She violated the law. And we're not just talking about every run-of-the-mill officer of the court. We're talking about a sitting judge who did this. And the power went to her head about you can't decide what the laws are. You adjudicate the law. And this is what we're seeing, right, with Gascon and San Francisco with the recall vote. Look, you are not a sovereign. You don't get to decide the laws as you go. You're elected to these positions or appointed to these positions. I'm talking AG, DA, judgeships, to enforce the laws that exist. You don't get to decide you're going to change them or you're not going to enforce what you swore an oath to do. So I remember that because that was outrageous, Ken, that judge and what she did.
But we, the voters, have to send the message: kick the bums out. Hey, folks, look at what's going on across the nation. You had a DA in San Francisco that got booted last night, 60-40.
Yeah, we're not talking about a slim margin here, folks. It was the DA, Chestnut Bodine, right? He was a former public defender. So you've got a public defender who runs and he gets the DA position in San Francisco. He's the son of convicted Weather Underground terrorists, right? He
Father and mother.
Say again?
Father and mother.
Yeah, father and mother. This is how he was raised. And what's interesting is you don't have to have any prosecutorial background to run and become the DA there. So basically you took a public defender and put them into the other side of the table And he continued to act like he was a public defender. And if we go to LA, right, we got Gascon, who's facing another recall election, and I think it's going to probably go through. And you got to remember that 20% of San Francisco's population has vamoosed. They got out of there because of the high crime. So they've left San Francisco, and it's a very democratic city. So when he is recalled with a 60-40 split on the vote, that's his own party saying enough. It's dangerous. Rape is up. Homicide is up. Larceny's up. All up across the board. It's not a safe city. And it's because of his lack of prosecuting. Now they just released a phone call with a murderer. This kid murdered. He did a home invasion. He murdered a 21-year-old. He injured a couple other people in this home invasion. And he's on the phone with his mother, Ken, and he's saying, I got to strike a deal while Gascon's still in office. Because if he gets recalled, we could put somebody in there who actually will hold up the law. And this guy, Gascon, is knocking down the murder, and he didn't even charge him with in association with. In other words, when you do a home invasion, they pile on the other stuff, right? In conjunction with home invasion, it's worse, and it ends up carrying life sentence. They've knocked it down, right, to basically manslaughter, and he's looking at a few years, like 6-7 years instead of life in prison. And he's saying to his mother, we got to get the lawyer. We got to strike a deal while Gascon's still in office, because I might end up doing real time if there's a real DA in there. It's the criminal saying that.
We can do better than that. I mean, they're far worse than Massachusetts has gotten, but let's be serious. There's plenty of radicals in Massachusetts, but the voters, 60% of which are independents, I think you just have to show that what we're talking about is a winning message, and you'll win. I think there's just a lot of, oh, geez, if I don't, I better just stick with the crowd. Oh, the Democrats are winning. Oh, I better follow. There's a lot of followers, but leaders need to go the way that will make Massachusetts better.
Yeah.
Because if you don't act now, folks, your kid's life, your grandkid's life is just not going to be like yours was. It's going to be far worse.
Republicans need 7 seats to flip the House. That's it. Now, they should get, even in a midterm election, more like 30-ish. If they don't get 50 or 60 seats, it's because they lost it. The Republicans have got to put, not just, we're not the Democrats who are soft on crime and want to tax you and thinks printing and spending more money will stop inflation, right? Because this is what the American people see, their platform. I mean, Biden's losing every demographic, right? Blacks are leaving him, Latino are leaving him, the suburban mothers are leaving him. They're all leaving him because he's done such a horrible job. He's also reportedly, Ken, is livid because of the comparisons to Jimmy Carter. And I agree with him. Stop comparing him to Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter, although he was not a good president, I think he was actually a good man. And let's not forget, he was a Naval Academy graduate and a nuclear sub-engineer. The guy has a brain on his shoulders. And he had empathy. Biden doesn't show empathy or brains for any of this. So stop comparing him to Carter. He is his own worst administration all by himself, man.
Joe, at least Jimmy Carter had the Camp David Accord. Joe Biden doesn't have anything.
He doesn't have anything.
Nor will he ever.
You know, and what about the fact that we had the Abrams Accord, and they were, because it was a Trump accomplishment, he has done everything to unravel the Abraham Accords, and that was, I mean, literally bringing peace to the Middle East. And the media whitewashed, right? Just glossed over it. They weren't going to give him the credit for that kind of achievement. That was a huge achievement. Unbelievable, Ken. Just unbelievable. But you're right. Look, folks, the last thing that we have left is the ballot box, which is why, by the way, this whole January 6th, the end round to all of this, because every congressional hearing has got to have a purpose. You know, they can't just have hearings, right? They have to list the purpose. And what they've listed the January 6 hearings for is the voter legislation. They want to get back to that, federalizing elections and taking it away from the states, where it's clearly outlined in the Constitution
1 minute.
that it's the state's domain, not federal. We have 50 little elections, and their end goal also, Ken, is to eliminate the Electoral College. So the last power we have as citizens is the ballot box, folks. And if we lose that, forget it. We are a banana republic. We're a third world nation, and presidents and Congress people will be selected, not elected. But we're against the clock, Ken. Oh, actually, no, we got a couple
Still
minutes.
got a minute.
What else do you have to put in today? Oh, I lost Ken. All right. So on that, so the recall vote in San Francisco, folks, again, this guy, 60-40. It was Proposition H on the ballot. Now, this could prove to be a bellwether for the voter sentiment across the country. That includes New York City, right, where we got
1
Alvin
minute.
Bragg, who got in there and issued some crazy memos right away about what they'll be enforcing and not enforcing. And what have we seen in New York City? Straight up looting, shoplifting, people are being pushed onto tracks, stabbed, Asian women being beaten in the foyer to their
30 seconds.
apartment building. I mean, we have got unbelievable crime because you've got a DA who refuses to prosecute. And then bail reform, which is a
15
complete,
seconds.
an absolute misnomer, right? Bail reform. There's nothing, it's just eliminating bail. So it's a revolving door that they're in and they're out, and there's no reason for this. So look, we got to wrap up the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Political
go.
Thursday. Jerry Doherty will be out, and then, of course, I'll be back on Friday at 1 o'clock. Don't forget to follow me on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi
Time
Show.
to go.
And, hey, have the great rest of the day, folks, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.